So maybe before we get to talking about your films and looking at some clips, could you talk, just start at the beginning. Where are you from, and what's your background?
So I'm originally from Nashville, Tennessee, and filmmaking is absolutely like my second life. I started out working in brand management because I thought that like writing wouldn't be a practical career. And so I was like a kid of the 80s, so it was like Reaganomics, and so like the MBA was like the thing to do. And so I went to this school called Florida A&M, and I did that. I got my MBA, and then I worked, like my first job was at Procter & Gamble in Cincinnati, Ohio, in brand management. I was working on panty liners, so I was selling panty liners out of college. And then you're basically trading in women's like insecurity. And so then I got laid off of that job a year later. And I said, well, at least let me move to the city where I want to live. And so I moved to New York City. And then I was working for a pharmaceutical company called Schering Plow. And on this company, I was working on like the Dr. Scholl's business. So now I've been upgraded to like wart removers and bunion pads. So like that was my life. And then, but the weirdly thing was like, it was like on that job where I went on my first like commercial shoot, because they would like let the brand team come and like observe, make sure like the logo's big enough and yada yada. And so like I'm following this PA around, like, what is this called? He's like, this is called film production. I'm like, how do I get in? He's like, go to film school. I'm like, what film schools do I go to? And he's like, NYU, but you won't get in there, School of Visual Arts and like New School. So I was like, okay. And so on that job, they had already put me on a performance improvement plan, which means they're about to fire you. And so, and so I quit that job before they could fire me, and I went to Colgate-Palmolive, which, you know, I'm selling toothpaste now. But because I'd missed like the application like deadline, I applied to NYU, got in anyway, and then quit my job, went to film school, and started over. So yeah, that was that.
Panty liners. So I have a young daughter. I told her this morning that I was going to be talking to a director, and she said she has not seen your film. She's too young, but she said you have to ask her what inspired her as a child in the movies. So on behalf of my daughter, I am asking you: were there like before you got into marketing? Like, what was your childhood sort of film experience? Did you grow up watching movies, and were there films that particularly inspired you?
Yeah, so when I was a kid, I was a typical, it's like Indiana Jones, like that was a thing. So it's like Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, Indiana Jones and Raiders of the Lost Ark, which I thought was too scary to watch as a kid. And I watched, like, oh, this wasn't scary, like, this was fine. But, and then, like, I like to read a lot. And so for me, like, I was really into the choose your own adventure books, you know, the books where you could, like, decide what happens. And so, like, I was more into that than films were, and then I'd try to like make the right choice, and I'd dog-ear the page so I could go back and make a different choice. So I think like, and then I tried to write my own choose your own adventure books, but like I never finished them because like too many endings. So yeah, like I was a big reader, I'd say, and like my mom was like into film, and that was back. Then like the VCR came along, and you could like tape stuff off TV. And so like that was my first editing job, was like, you know, pressing pause during commercials and then pressing record play when the thing came back on. So yeah, so I think I was into it, but didn't like even realize it. And then like that was back when the video stores, you could get the posters if you wanted them. You could go and put your name and phone number in the back and get the posters, but I didn't realize how valuable they become. So when I went to college, I gave them all away, but I had like all these posters. So that was like a roundabout, I guess, film education.
Yeah. So really, storytelling was something that appealed to you from an early age. And, but you really didn't think about film school, like you were on the business track, and film school really didn't enter your mind until you'd already been in the advertising world.
Yeah, no, I was like a typical like suburban middle class kid, and like art felt like a luxury. It felt like an indulgence, you know. It was always about like do something practical, and like, you know, I thought if I major, like my mom said, if you major in English, you're gonna end up like teaching English. You're not gonna like, you know, like being a writer is like it's like a flaky, not, you know, guaranteed thing. And so I thought, oh, I'll write like in the background. I'll do it as like a hobby. And like while I was working on these jobs, I'd be in the cafeteria just like writing stuff. And so, you know, I realized like you can't, I don't know, like whatever it is that you want to do is like gonna come out, and like you can't just put it like on the back burner like it's gonna burst forth. And so after 3 jobs in 3 years, I'm like, maybe it's not the job, like maybe it's me, and I need to like just like try this thing. And so yeah.
And your early writing efforts, were you writing, I mean, you haven't done, your films are not like Indiana Jones. So like, were you writing stuff that was always personal and more, you know, independent in spirit, or did you ever think, oh, film, I'm gonna do like, you know, big, you know,
yeah, so
Indiana
before I was
Jones
writing,
stuff?
I was like writing just like these little like short stories, you know, they were like dark, you know, like, I don't know, kind of like depressing little short stories. And yeah, I just think that film, like, when I saw like screenwriting, I thought about it differently. I thought, oh, there's a way to bring the stories to life, because you don't have to like chase a publisher. You can actually make it. You don't have to give your characters to anybody. So I had never conceptualized as like screenwriting as a way. And then when I actually, like when I applied to NYU, I applied to the dramatic writing program and the film program, and I thought, oh, I'll get into the dramatic writing program. I won't get into the film program. And so when I got rejected from the dramatic writing program, I was like, okay, well, that's it. Like, there's no way I'm going to get in the film program, because I'd never touched a camera and had no, like, film background. When I got in, it was like, holy shit, you know? So, yeah, so for me, I just feel like it's just the thing I've always loved to do. It was just, like, changing the form. And I realized, like, writers write, like, no matter the form. So, like, then writing screenplays just became about software, you know? And I remember, like, when I first started, I couldn't even afford, like, to buy the Final Draft software. So I had like the free trial, and it would print the watermark on every page. And so, but you know, so I like roll with that for a while. So I think like the format is the only thing that you can learn, but like if characters and like relationships, if that stuff is in you, it's in you, you know, and it's gonna come out no matter what, so.
So you go to NYU in the film program, and that's where you made, I know you've made several short films, but that's where I believe your thesis film was a short of Pariah. And can you talk kind of the genesis of specifically of the short? Because it was a really ambitious short. It was like
it's like 30 minutes. Yeah, no. So basically, so also while film school, I was also coming out, and so like my parents just thought I was having like a nervous breakdown. I was like, first you quit your job, now you're coming out. But and so like I wrote Pariah as like a response, and it's funny. I didn't even like want to write it, but. Nikisa Cooper, who's like my producer at the time, she's like, you should write about this. I was like, you kidding me? This is an awful experience. I want to forget about it. I don't want to know about it. She's like, no, like you should write this. And so I wrote Pariah initially as a feature, and it's like a big 140-page feature, because I didn't know that features shouldn't be 140 pages. And then I needed a thesis to graduate, and so there's nothing else I could think about except this. And so we shot the first act of it as a short and changed it around a little bit and made it all about the dildo. And just did it as a short, and people said, oh, you can't do a half-hour short, no one's gonna program it. But we did it anyway, and we shot it like in like the South Bronx, actually, and not Brooklyn. And then we shot it on film. So like Nikita's got all these crazy discounts. We got free camera, we got film donated from Kodak. And so we shot this little film like in the South Bronx and made it work. And then we took it around the festival circuit. And like for us, like Sundance was like the last stop, because it didn't get programmed like the first year. And it was like kind of like the gay circuit that would like really like program this. It was like Outfest, I think was our first one, and then LA Film Festival. And LA Film Festival was huge because it was the first time our film didn't get ghettoized in like the gay section. So it wasn't just like gay shorts. They put it in with like other shorts, and it won.
You won the audience award.
Yeah. And so like that for like the first kind of like major turn. And then, you know, other festivals started to program, and then Sundance programmed it like the year after. Wow. Which is unusual to program like a short that had already like made its way like around kind of like the gay circuit and like, you know, the smaller festival circuit.
That's a totally inspiring story, I think, to film it. I think there is a misconception that like, you know, your festival premiere is critical with, like there's a lot more play with short films, I think.
Yeah, no, it's like you have to go like where the love is. And for me, it was like the queer community that rallied, and it's like, you're not gonna ignore this short, and they made it big, you know? And like the most harrowing screening on that whole thing was like the Palm Springs Film Festival. So it was like a room full of like 65-year-old white people. And that opening song, all you ladies pop your pussy like this, I was like, okay, they're all gonna get up and leave. But they didn't, and so after we got through Palm Springs, I was like, okay, yeah, this is like universal. Like, you know, people are like rocking with it, so yeah.
So when that was finished, did you and Nikis go, okay, now we're gonna raise money and turn it into a feature? Was that pretty?
And so throughout that process, so then we got, so like the Sundance Lab, so like reached out, and they reached out to like my writing teacher at NYU, and like, who are the writers like we should know? And so like my it was like Mick Casal, and so it's like, oh, you should know about Dee. And so then Rachel Shanoff said, oh, can you send us a script? Like, do you have a feature we should be considering? And so I sent in my 140-page monster. I was like, here's this script, you know. And so then I got into the screenwriting labs in '07, and then I came back in the summer of '08 and did the directing labs where you get to shoot like three to five scenes from it. And that was like, I mean, the Sundance Institute was really my first introduction to industry, because I didn't have an agent, I didn't know producers, you know, like we were just like the Institute really brokered those relationships. And actually like Project Involve is how we met our editor, Mako Kamitsuna. So Nikise was in Project Involved, and she met Mako. Was like, oh, there's a great editor, like, you got to know. And I remember, like, we were doing, like, a short film contest with, like, Netflix. It's like the Find Your Voice competition, which we lost. But, like, so just, like, losing is, like, critical. But, like, that's how I met Mako, and Mako, like, cut the trailer for that. Yeah. And that was that relationship kind of forged. And so it was, like, you know, this kind of, like, unexpected kind of winding road. But, and then 2009, Sundance had their first, like, creative producers lab. And so then Nikise, like, did that. And so it's, like, literally, like, over and over again, like, the Institute, like, holding us in the light and kind of bullied us through. And it was the short and the lab and the combination of those things that, you know, helped us start to find financing. But we never had all the money in the bank at the same time. We shot Pariah for, like, $400-something thousand, and it was never in the bank at once. And so we had finally, like, we went to NYU, and we like, won a grant. It was like the Christopher Vague, Chris Columbus, it was like the Richard Vague, Christopher Columbus grant. And typically it's supposed to be like $150K, but in my year, of course, they split it like 3 ways. So like, me and 2 other dudes won, and so that meant it's like $50K each. And so we said, fine, let's take this $50K, let's just go, because we're never gonna have it all. And we shot, so we had just enough money to get it in the can. And then a wire came through, we had just enough to, like, you know, pay the crew. And then we got more money, then we could finally get the film out the lab. And then we had just enough money to get through the edit. So it's like we made that film on layaway. And so we literally, basically, yeah. So we, like, shot it in, like, winter of 2009, like December of 2009, edited, like, 2010 as we could afford, and then it premiered Sundance 2011. And then since then, it's been, like, you know, I've been working, so.
That is an awesome story. I mean, there's a lot in there to think about. But one question I have, was your intention to reshoot the beginning or to use the short as part of what went in the feature? Because you did end up keeping that, right? You used your existing footage.
Yeah, we, like, had to use that. I mean, like, I think, I'm trying to think the opening sequences that reshot. Like, the bus scene we wanted to use, because working with, like, the New York MTA is, like, a whole deal. And so it's like, we're never gonna get another bus again, you know? And so we, like, reused the bus scene. The opening, I'm trying to remember, did we reshoot that? It might be from the short, I can't even, like, remember now. But, like, we definitely, like, reused parts of the short because we had to. Like, we didn't have the money, and so it was kind of like, then the short really kind of paid off. But, like, we used a different actor for, like, the father, of course. So actually, yeah, we had to reshoot a lot because we cast differently. But I knew that I wanted Adepero, who plays Alike, and Pernell, who plays Laura, to be the leads, and, like, that was a stance. Like, as we're, like, trying to find financing, so many people said, "Oh, what if you can make one of the characters white?" And I was like, "No, like, that's not really the story." And it was like, "Oh, you know, I mean, like, we got proposed all kinds of crazy things. Oh, cast, you know, XYZ famous actress as Alike," and it was like, "No, it's like these 2 women, like, they're the leads," and even, like, the sister Sharonda, Sarah Melissa. So it was, like, important to, like, keep my main cast members, and, like, that was a financing battle because people kept trying to, like, recast the film, and so that's why in part it took so long, because we stuck to our guns, like, no, like, it's this cast, you know, so, yeah.
Well, the short was amazing, and the feature is even more amazing. I suspect many of you have seen it, but let's take a look at the first clip. Dee already referred to it. It is the strap-on scene. It's so real, and it has the humor of reality in it, and I'm curious what it was like on set, like, filming that. Like,
No, so I mean, so the point of it was to introduce, like, of course, as Alike tries to first express her sexuality, it has to be through, like, white male sexuality. Like, that's the thing that's kind of forced upon her. And so, you know, that's why it had to be, like, this white dildo. It wasn't just, like, comedic. And so I just, you know, got all the actors really comfortable. Like, one by one, I let them, like, see it, be introduced to it, know what was gonna happen, just so it's not, like, springing it on them. And then, like, just had, like, fun with it. Adepero was just, like, she was, like, great and having fun, and, like, so it was good, yeah.
can you talk about cast? So this is your first film, and you put together an unbelievable cast. Adepero, she had acted before, she had some credits, but nothing really that big, and it's an incredible performance from her. How did you?
So for casting, it was like the old school casting. Like, we put an ad in, like, Backstage magazine, and there's some kind of online thing where actors can self-submit, and so Adepero had just, like, submitted herself online. And then Pernell, I think the same thing, like, self-submitted, because we didn't know a casting director. So this is literally just, like, down and dirty. Like, you know, like, we had even tried, like, lesbian clubs and, like, community centers, just put up flyers, do you want to be in a movie? And so Adepero I saw first. And actually it was funny because she was actually changing clothes for the audition, like, in the bathroom. And the Keith had seen her like in the bathroom changing, and she's like, "Oh my God, she's doing the scene, like in the bathroom, like she's doing it," you know. And she came in wearing her like little brother's clothes, and she was just it. Like she just like embodied it. And just the fact that she had the clothes ready, and she was just the character. And so then it's about finding like a Laura like that could go toe to toe with her, and you could believe that they're like best friends. And then like Pernell Walker came in. And it's funny because her like headshot was super like glossy and like lipstick. And I was like, oh no, she can't be Laura. It's like, oh well, let's just like see her, like let's just like see her in person. And she came in and just like transformed. And then we had this little construction paper baseball cap, and like over headshots, I was putting this paper cap over headshots to see like who could like rock a baseball cap. And like I don't know, it was like Pernell, like that, like they had chemistry, so I had them like read together. And they were great. So yeah, like the casting for this was like super lo-fi. It was in like the NYU like library or some place where you could like rent free space and have people come in. So.
And in terms of, I know you'd made some other short films, so you had experience by this point, but still, this was a major production for a student film. What was your process in terms of working with actors? As a new director, how did you, I mean, beyond that scene, like did you have a rehearsal process? Did you?
Yeah, so I'm not into like reading the lines. Like I'm just really into just like the relationships. So like I sent, so I had Pernell and Adepero go to Dave & Buster's in character, you know, like go as like butch lesbians to Dave & Buster's and just see what that experience is like. See how people respond to you. See how people like look at you. And it was like, in a way I was worried because like, oh, like this is actually like dangerous. You know, they could get like bashed or something. But you know, they were together and I think they're able to like change. But they went and they like were able to understand this, how people look at you when you dress this way or when you present as butch, you know. And so, and then I sent them on an assignment to go to like a lesbian club, and like, you know, try to like talk to somebody, like try to get like one phone number, you know. And they did that. And so I just put them in character and just like sent them into the world so they could like feel like the gaze of others and like how people like look down on you or, you know, or are desirous of you, or just like to let them feel all that, you know.
Yeah.
So in character they were willing to like do those exercises. And then I had them write letters to each other, like had the husband write an anniversary card to the wife. So Charles Parnell, who plays the husband, have him like write a letter to Kim Wayans as if it's your 10th wedding anniversary, and have them like write letters to each other after the fact as if it's 5 years later. And so just really just try to create like a shared history. And then right before we shot, I just did like a family therapy session where I had this friend of a friend who was like kind of like a therapist, and just like we're all gonna sit on this couch and like each of them had like different things that they wanted to talk about that would contradict what someone else wanted to like talk about, and just like do this kind of therapy session where the family could really kind of just like bounce off each other. And so it's like that was a process, just really just sending them into the world in character and letting them like build those memories for themselves. And,
Wow.
Yeah.
So, so you finish the feature, you get into Sundance, and you sell to Focus out of the festival, right?
Yeah, yeah. And so going into the festival, like again, like we didn't have an agent, we didn't have like, you know, we had like a sales agent who was like Cinetic, and we had a lawyer who's Victoria Cook. And so we went into the festival with just like a sales agent and a lawyer, and between the two of them, they worked it out, and Focus bought it. Yeah.
Okay, that's the awesome story. That is still for many filmmakers. That's the goal, the hope. Were you? And obviously it went really well. I mean, the film, I feel like it got, you know, incredible reviews. It did really well. But was that process, were you involved in that very much, like throughout the sale and release, or was it kind of Focus took over and?
Yeah, so like during the festival, we're like sweating it out because like our lawyer is saying, okay, something's happening, it's looking good. And then we heard like Focus was in the running, and at the time Focus was like a huge indie company. It was like, you know, like really exciting. And so like we were excited like when it sold. And then James Seamus used to run Focus at that time. And so it was like, you know, okay, here's like this like, you know, artsy guy, and so it's in good hands. And like one of the first conversations, he was like, oh, you know, do you want to change the name of the film? And I was like, no. And he's like, okay. And like he let it go, you know? And so he didn't like, cause it's like a tough sell. It's like, you're gonna do a black lesbian coming of age story, and it's called Pariah. You know, there was like, give me something, you know? And so just the fact that he didn't like force a title change, which he could have called it, you know, whatever he wanted to call it. But just from the beginning, he like didn't change the frame of it. They put their logo up front. He didn't force a title change, and he really kind of like let the film tonally be kind of like what we had built it as and what felt authentic, you know, for the community from which it came, you know. And so, Yeah, like we were there, and like instead of like doing like a poster, this like poster competition, because we had built like throughout the short film's life, built this like social media following for the film, and so we felt it was important to like engage them, and plus we did this like Kickstarter campaign that even helped us be able to afford to go to Sundance and like finish like the sound and all that, and so we just like really tried to keep the community like engaged around it, and they like allowed that. Yeah, it's like the only thing was like in terms of like the festival strategy, like we wanted to go to more like gay and lesbian festivals after the fact and focus, like nix that. And so that was the one thing was like, well, why can't we go to these festivals anymore? So, but other than that, yeah, in terms of like the trailer and like, the posters, they let us be involved and have input.
That's great. So at that point, were you working on other projects? Were you writing other things at that time as that potentially would be your second film?
Yeah, and so as part of the Focus deal, they gave me like a blind script deal. So they paid me to like write another script. And so I wanted to do this like Memphis crime thriller, about this black detective who happened to be like a lesbian. And so like they paid me to write it. So it's cool. So out of Sundance, like I have this other job to write this new screenplay. And so I wrote it, and they didn't do it. They felt it was like too small. It wasn't international enough. But that kept me paid for a year. And then also I was trying to get into TV. So I'd written this spec pilot called The Ville, which is about Nashville. And so I'm like working this spec pilot, taking meetings, like trying to get this like show off the ground. And my agent is finally like, you know what? Like no one wants a show about Nashville. And then like a year fucking later, there's a show called Nashville. So I was like, this is messed up. This is my show. Like, but anyway, so yeah. But like the good thing that came of it was because we've been shopping this spec pilot around. Like a lot of studio execs had seen it. I think like HBO had seen it, and so then they brought me in to like write a pilot for Viola Davis. It was like an educational theme thing, and so I came in and like then I was working on that, and then that didn't go, and then they were just like, well, let's just do something, and so then like Bessie came along, and they're like, hey, we have the script, we've been kicking around forever. Do you want to rewrite it? And I'm like, hell yeah, because then it's Bessie Smith, and I wanted to like talk about her sexuality, and like this woman from Tennessee, and I'm from Tennessee. I'm like, yeah, like I got to do this. So I came in to write it, and then it was written so specifically. They were like, well, do you want to direct it too? And I was like, yeah, I want to direct it. And so that's how Bessie came about with like with Lynn Amato. Like we got to find something, and all these like scripts that had been like circulating around, and so then did that in like I think we shot Bessie in like 2014, 2013, 2014, and so yeah.
So was that, I know there'd been Bessie Smith projects like in development for years and years. Was there a script that you started with, or did you just start from scratch, or what was the script development process for that?
So I saw like one older version of the script, but there had been like so many like writers on it. So I saw from like just the previous writer. And so like I read it, and it was like, it's supposed to be like a polish, but I just did like, I'm just gonna like just do this over, So I just like rewrote it, and then yeah, like that was it. I mean, for me, like, I just get excited about characters, and like I'm always trying to go for like the brokenness. I'm always trying to go for the cracks. I'm always trying to go for the complications. And so for me, I wanted Bessie to kind of have some of that darkness, and I wanted to like use the material to explore like loneliness and fame, and like how it can be like thousands of people love you on stage. There are hundreds of people backstage, but when you go home, it's just you alone. And so, and then Queen Latifah like really like went there for me, and like gave me like the critical scene where she was willing to like just be naked and like let's just do this interrogation of the self. And so, yeah, no, it's great to work. And like Monique is amazing. She would come to set, like she knows her lines, everybody else's lines, and she's energetic. And like, and my whole take was like, we can't talk about Bessie Smith, and let's talk about Ma Rainey. So I wanted to bring in like Ma Rainey and talk about that again, like for me injecting into it what I wanted to explore, which is like these like queer black women who were self-sufficient, who had their mobility, who had their sexuality, and we're still talking about them today. So that was like, as a filmmaker, you're always trying to find the thing that you really want to talk about, and then inject it into like the script or the subject at hand.
With that, why don't we take a look at a clip from Bessie? I can imagine for somebody who's doing their second feature, coming off the micro-budget Pariah experience, where it's like truly on a shoestring, doing this with so many more resources, access to everything that HBO can bring, that would be a great opportunity. Were there challenges for you as a director in getting used to that, or acclimating to that different scale, or was it just a great experience I mean, the film is beautiful, and the performances in it are so fantastic. But I'm just curious what that adjustment was like for you.
Yeah. In a weird way, I think it's harder to make a film with no money than it is to make a film with a lot of money, because a lot of money, there's like department heads for everything. Like everybody has like 5 assistants, and so you get to like, you know, kind of own. You get to just kind of focus on like just the performances and just kind of like the blocking and the shot list and everything. And so for this, I think the biggest thing was like the crowd scenes and just like managing just like crowds. So it's like what money buys you is background, and you can feel like a theater, you can feel like a tent. And so that was like challenging but like fun to work with, that you don't have to like shuffle faces from corner to corner. You can like, you know, just put the faces in the seats, and then like, you know, and we still shuffled even with Bessie, like shuffled a few faces around. So I think it was like working like with the crowds, like was like the big thing like I learned on that set, like how, and like also because like a musical, it's like working with like playback, you know, and like that whole thing, and keeping the crowd hype in between takes, because like the actors know, but these people who you've hired for the day, they don't realize that they're gonna do the scene like 5 times, you know, and you know, keeping the crowd up and excited. And Queen Latifah was great because she would just come out and laugh and joke, and the crowd would be like back hype again. So like that was a big thing. And then also, you know, for Bessie, I wanted to be like really specific about like the song choices. You know, I didn't want to be just like the greatest hits, Pigfoot and a Bottle of Beer. Like I wanted to be like the songs that we don't know, and songs that really talked about kind of her kind of impact for me as like a womanist, you know, and as a kind of like empowerer of women. So Preaching the Blues, where she's talking about, she's telling women like how to like wield their sexuality and how to be in charge of their bodies in a way. And then from the opening scene where she's like, it's called Young Woman's Blues, where she's like, I'm a young woman, you know, and like it's like this assertion of like self and who she is, and at the beginning of the film she doesn't quite believe that, but I love that song because it's about, you know, no one's gonna like run me down and you don't know me, and then over the film we come to know her. So like, you know, they let me have like my song choices, so it's not just like the songs we already know. So like that was important as a director to figure out like what music means and what songs mean, and really be, you know, deliberate in like choosing kind of like what this character's gonna sing. So yeah.
And in terms of working with actors, did you shift how your approach from Pariah to this, or in terms of like how you worked with Queen Latifah? Like, what was that relationship creatively? What was that relationship like for you?
No, so I have the same process. I don't believe in like rehearsals and reading the lines. I just want to get the relationships. And so the core relationship I wanted to get was between her and Lucille, between Bessie and Lucille. So I brought in Queen Latifah, and Tika Sumpre plays her girlfriend, and just had them like talk about their favorite date together, you know, and this kind of have tension of how kind of like everybody knows who Lucille is, but we're all pretending like not to know. So the hiding in plain sight of it, and how Lucille like wants a family, and how Bessie kind of, she's like gonna make her own family, and she like wants everything and doesn't kind of really care or take care of people's like feelings. And so I just brought her and Tika in and had them like in my office, like on a couch, and just like being close and just kind of like talking about like a first date. And I had like Queen Latifah and Monique come in and just like tell like road stories, tell war stories, just kind of like trash talk about the road and like places they've been and women they've seen, you know? And so it just became like a BS session. So I just like to do these workshops where it's like the actors talking to each other, creating a shared history together. And like, to me, if the core is there, if that relationship is there, then like the lines will come. And I did a thing with like Michael K. Williams and Queen Latifah about closeness. So I had them facing each other in chairs, and like they could say whatever they wanted to each other, but if the other person felt it was a lie, they move their chair further away. If they feel like it's truth, they move closer. So like playing with proximity. And so I just do things like that with the actors, and I trust that they're gonna know the lines. I trust that they're gonna know the, you know, that. Like I care about the subtext. If you get the subtext right, then the text is gonna flow. So that's how I work.
And through that rehearsal process, did that result in any changes to the script, or not so much, because it's about the subtext there?
Not really. I mean, what I think it does, I think the rehearsal process, it just gets them quickly to the discomfort. If you can just hold eye contact with somebody for 60 seconds without like, you know, breaking down, like you can do it. I think it's one of the hardest things is to be seen, to like allow yourself to be seen and to see. And so like with the actors, like, you know, everyone's coming like with their brand and with their self-image, and like these things I think help kind of like make it a safe place, make them vulnerable, take away the veneer, and just let your face be seen, let your eyes be looked at, let your face, like let someone explore you with their eyes, you know? And that kind of like, you know, just gets them quickly to an intimate space.
That's great. So I think that brings us to your new film, Mudbound, which I honestly, I said to you before, but I think it's such an amazing and powerful film, and so ambitious. I mean, it feels to me like it's made by the same person who made Pariah and Bessie, but the scope and the scale that you're working on, and just the nuance of all the performances are so compelling. Can you talk like why you wanted to do it? I don't know if you'd read the novel or if it came to you as a film project, But what drew you to want to do Mudbound?
So it was back in 2015, so a producer named Cassian Elways, who was friends with my agent Craig, came to me with a script by Virgil Williams. And like usually I hate every script I read, I'm always saying no, but I read the script and I really loved it. And thought, okay, there's a lot of there, and that prompted me to go back and read the book by Hilary Jordan to see like what else I could pull. And the thing I liked about Hilary's writing was like the internal monologues. Like I think the things that people say to themselves is sometimes more interesting than the things they say to others. And so I really like love these like internal monologues of the characters. And for me personally, the thing I wanted to bring to it was like a rounded Jackson family. Like so it allowed me to interrogate my own personal history. And so, you know, I told Cassie, and with Cassie and offering me this, it was like the first time a producer said to me, "It's yours if you want it." Usually I got to do a PowerPoint presentation and a spreadsheet and dog and pony show and 3 meetings, you know, but Cassie was like, "This is yours if you want it." And so I was like, okay, that's trust. And like the producer trusting you is everything, because if they trust you, then that gives you your casting, that gives you your cut, and that changes really what a thing can be. And so I jumped at it because it was a chance to like, you know, dig into my own personal history, change the script, like inject that into it and just make it, you know, be this kind of like dark symbiosis between the two families. And so that's what I was going for.
Since most people here probably haven't seen it, do you just want to give like kind of the overview of what the film is about?
Yeah. So Mudbound, so it's set in like the post-World War II South, and there's also some moments in the beginning where it's like before the war starts. But it's about these two families that are connected to each other and to this particular piece of land. And so I'll let you watch some clips, but it's about these two families who have this dark symbiotic relationship to each other.
You have 6 characters, I think, who have voiceover in it, which is, I can't think of another film that does that. And it's so effective. I feel like it creates this tapestry where you're equally invested in so many different characters in here. And it feels like it's not the story of one family or one protagonist, but it's like this world. It feels like such a like American movie where it's telling the story of a moment in American history, but through these two families. But how do you do that? I mean, was that in the script that you got, and was that ever?
So like that's the conceit of the book. The conceit of the book is written, you know, in chapters. Like each character has their own like point of view. Like Isabel Wilkerson's book, Warmth of the Suns, like each chapter, it's like the book is structured that way. And so the script followed that. And so I just wanted to add to it. Like I wrote new monologue, like the monologue of Ronzel and his leaving. Like that's a scene that's not in the book, but it's important to establish like Ronzel's not just a child of Hap and Florence. He's a child of the community, and this is why it matters that he's gone, and this is why his absence is felt, and this is why they cling to him like when he comes back. And then Florence's monologue, just like that wasn't in the book, but it was like it's important to establish like her relationship to him and how she has this particular kind of psychic connection to her son as he's going away. And so it was important just to like contextualize them, you know, like they didn't just come with the land, they didn't just come with the house, you know, you can't just have this guy appear from overseas. Like we have to like invest in them to feel something.
Yeah.
And so the conceit of the book is like each of these characters speaking out, and that's one of the things I loved about it and wanted to keep going, and that was an original script. I just wanted to like add monologue, like add things that would kind of give context. And just watching this now, I realized like I just like ensemble cast. Like Pariah is like an ensemble, Bessie's like an ensemble, and this is like an ensemble. It's just like getting like really seen as that because we're spanning so much time. But yeah, I just love actors, and like that's the thing I kind of gravitate toward.
Yeah. Well, you definitely capture that relationship between the mother and son. That moment when she turns her back, it's so powerful. But I mean, let's talk about the casting for a moment. Mary J. Blige, and I mean the entire cast. Watching this clip, I was just struck by all the faces. Like there's never a frame where there isn't an interesting face to look at, and just like the father who doesn't speak, where it's just you just see that quiet. I mean, there's this stoicism in both families that is incredibly powerful. But when you were casting, how do you do that? How do you build that world?
And so Billy Hopkins was my casting director for the principal cast, and I love Billy, and Billy helped me cast Bessie, and I love Billy because he finds those faces for me, those great faces. He knows like what I'm looking for. I'm looking for, you know, you just have to believe them, like especially for a period film, like that's the thing that can take you out of it. You can have the costumes right, you can have everything right, but if they look like they're from LA or they just had a goji berry shake, like you're not gonna believe it, you know what I mean? And so like I needed people who look like they've never seen a goji berry in their lives, and like, you know, and Angie Wells at the Shout Out on like makeup really created this like naturalistic makeup look where they all have on makeup but you can't see it, and it gives kind of like sweaty, sticky, you know, country feel. And then as important as your casting director, like you have to think about your like local casting director, like because that's the people in the church, that's the sharecroppers, so you really need a background casting director that really gets it. And so like we had these references, like all these old WPA photos. And so, you know, working with your locals casting director is like as important as your principal casting director, because if the background faces look fake, then that takes you out of it too. And so it was RPM Casting, I believe, that did our local casting in Louisiana, a woman named Megan, I'm blanking on her last name, but you know, she found me those faces. I could send her like these photos and it's like find me faces that look like, you know, they're only getting like, you know, so many calories a day and they're not, you know, so like that, that feel, yeah.
No goji berry.
No goji berries, yeah.
Why don't we, let's look at another clip. On your crew, you brought back some people who had worked on Pariah. Your editor, Mako, is back on this. I think your composer.
Tamar Kali, yeah, she composed a score for this. It's her first film score. And
wow.
All I said to her was like dark strings, and she like did, like, you know, created this beautiful orchestral sound with like a 7 or 8 piece ensemble. And then Rob Morgan, who plays Hap, he's the guy in the liquor store in Pariah, who's like trash talking. Like, I've been trying to work with Rob forever, so I brought him back to work on this. And then Michael T. Boyd, who did my costumes on Bessie, I brought him to do the costumes on this. So like, as you make these relationships and people who you love their work, you bring them forward. Like Angie Wales, I met, who's the head of our makeup department. I met her on tour for Bessie, so she was doing just my personal makeup. And I was like, you know, you should like run a department. And so I called her to like come do this. And so it was just like, and you know, I just really love how many women there are behind the camera. So Rachel Morrison is my cinematographer, and
amazing,
and she's amazing. And I had known her, like Len Amato from HBO was like, oh, you should check her out, because she had just shot Confirmation for them, right. And so I was looking for like a woman DP, and so like she was like amazing, and she was the one. And I'd seen like Fruitvale Station and Dope, and then so Mako is my editor, another woman, so I wanted her to edit it. Tamar Kali to do the score, and then our sound recordist was a woman named Pud Kuzak, who gave us like some of the cleanest, like great crystal clear sound, and we're beating up her mics with like rain machines and water trucks and like fans, and like the sound is like so clear, like we didn't have to like really re-record anything. And then Angie, who I mentioned on like makeup. So and then the 2 guys were Michael Boyd on costumes, and David Bomba was our production designer, and I liked him because he's a Southerner, and he came recommended to me by Ron Schmidt, who's a line producer I worked with on Bessie. So I really just kind of pulled from people like that I knew and trusted to kind of come together and try to do this. So yeah.
And you were back in the green room, you were saying it was a 25-day shoot?
So 29 days,
29.
technically, yeah. And so it was like, we shot like 28 days in plantation country in New Orleans. So we're out in like Vacherie, so it's like an hour and a half outside New Orleans. And we lost 2 days to rain, because ironically you can't, even though this film required rain, we needed like our narrative rain that we made ourselves, like not like nature's rain. And so and like you can't shoot like every time there's like a lightning strike within a certain number of miles, you have to like shut down for like half an hour. And so every time like a lightning strikes, the clock resets. And so we lost like 2 days, because there's like I think Cassian says there's like a tornado or something crazy. Anyway, so we lost 2 days of weather. So we had 26 days all told in Louisiana, and then we shot 2 days in Budapest, Hungary. We shot like all the war stuff, or the tank scenes in Budapest with Ronzel and him like going to find his child. And then we shot a day in Long Island at the World War II Museum. We shot an actual B-25 plane, and like there's a museum, and Richard Rutkowski was the DP for the plane stuff. But yeah, so all in like 29 days. So it was a crazy amount of time to get, you know, a World War II epic shot. So yeah.
It's remarkable. I mean, the film, when you all see it, it is, you know, it is, again, it's this human scale story about the intimate connection with these 2 families, but it feels epic. It feels like I love the length of the film. It's like 2 hours, 15 minutes. You really give this story room to breathe, and I think it makes it so impactful.
Yeah, no, and that's why it's important to like really pick your producers carefully. Like, they're not just physical producers, they're creative producers. And so lesser producers would freak out and make you cut it. You know, at Sundance, when it's not selling, they said, okay, cut 10 minutes, you know. But, you know, Cassian, Charles King, and Kim Roth at Macro, Poppy, all those guys like stood behind it, and they're like, okay, this is the cut, like we're not gonna touch it. But that's why the producers like really matter, because they let me have my cut. So I had like festival cut on it, and then it kind of stuck. And so like, festival cut, by the way, is like a sneaky way of getting a final cut. So, you know, just like do that. So, yeah, but they really like stuck behind the story and let it be. And even like the film score, they didn't hear the score until like a day before Sundance. And like, I was like, you know, I was freaking out. I was like, why do they want to like listen to the score? And my partner's like, babe, like, let them listen to the score. Like, they got to hear the score. And so, but they really just like let us have it. Like, they weren't in the editing room. They weren't in like the scoring session. And they just like let me have it and trusted me. And it's like that trust is important, because, you know, to have this cast, you know, it's not a typical like Hollywood cast. And they were like, okay. And like, there are moments where we needed like more money. So for example, there's a small town set. And, you know, the line producer's saying, oh, we can shoot at this general store set that's right near the plantation set, and it saves money and time. And I was like, no, like we really have to like create this idea of like he's behind enemy lines. And so to accomplish that, we need like a town set. And so the producers like ponied up the extra money to like get like the small town set so we could put it on the screen. So it's like accumulation of small decisions like that then like add up and make a difference. And like that's because of the producers who just like trusted me and trusted the crew and trusted the cast and really just invested in us.
That's great. Could you talk a little bit more about your working relationship with Rachel Morrison in terms of creating the look of the film and sort of what early conversations would have been like with her about it?
Yeah, totally. So Rachel had all these WPA photo like references, and like that was the look. And it's like before people really understood like what the camera could do, so it give you these really kind of candid faces. And so we had those as references. And then I like there's this documentary filmmaker like Les Blank, and he had this like little thing like The Truth According to Lightning Hopkins. And so I like that documentary feel where it's like it's grainy and like it really kind of like lets time move at the speed of life, where like it takes like this one character like, you know, a minute and a half to walk from background to foreground, and the camera just like waits for him to walk from background to foreground. And so I wanted to bring that kind of feel into it, where we feel like we're just like observing, we're peeking, and in a weird way, because there's so many voices, we made the decision to make it feel very like subjective. So even though we're eavesdropping, it's super subjective. So when you're with Henry, you know, we see the field as Henry sees it. We see hope, we see commerce, we see opportunity. But when we're with Hap, we see the field as Hap sees it. We see futility, we see drudgery. And so we just really kind of worked on those kind of ideas and like how these families were mirrors of each other. Like the two sons are united by this trauma before there's like really a name for it. Like the two women are united by the sense of economic disenfranchisement. Like their husbands try to tell them what to do with the money, but they're being disobedient and going around their husband's back and making decisions for their family. And the two husbands are united by the sense of disinheritance. So this got chopped, but like Hap has this whole like monologue, like what good is a deed? And so Hap, you know, his ancestors' bones are in this ground, his blood is in this ground, his sweat is in this ground, but he can't take title to it. Whereas Henry can like buy his way in, and Henry who's played by Jason Clarke, feels disinherited because, you know, Pappy sold away the land he's supposed to have. So we just really try to work thematically and conceptually. And there are also contemporary artists I love, like Whitfield Lavelle, who like paints on wood. And so like in the Jackson's Cabin, we wanted to have that warmth. So it's like tone on tone. So it's like brown on brown on brown. Whereas in the McCallans, like pastel is cooler. It's a cooler palette. So even though they have more, it feels less comfortable. It feels less cozy. And so like those are kind of things that we figured out. And Rachel had to cut holes in the ceiling because we shot in actual sharecroppers' cabins. Like all this, like all locations. So just to be able to get light was a challenge. And so David Bomb, our production designer, convinced the owner to let's move these cabins, A, back into the fields where they're not supposed to be, and then B, then Rachel had to like, you know, figure out how to get lights up in the ceiling and use available light to like light these faces and just let the difference between inside and outside kind of like fall off. So
nice.
No, it was amazing.
So I think we have one more clip. Let's take a look at that. First of all, the film to me feels extremely contemporary, and I mean it obviously is of the 1940s, but it resonates in a completely contemporary way, and also what comes through the story is the commonalities between these two families, in a way, more than anything else, right? You empathize with every character.
Yeah, and it's important. So the Atwoods are the poor white family, and so they're in the book, and it's important to bring them forward as part of the film. So we see the layers of like middle-class white, poor white, like they're sharecroppers too, you know? And so it's really important for me to have that difference. And as unlike the woman front, we see how like Laura isn't really able to help her. So it's like Laura, Florence, and Vera. And like, you know, Laura is not really comfortable with Florence, who's a black woman. She's not comfortable with Vera, who's a poor white woman. And so I was just really exploring like whiteness as currency, you know? And so the Atwoods kind of demonstrate that. So in the way like Vera, who's the woman who comes in the yard, she's figured out her daughter's being molested. You know, I'll let you watch the movie. But anyway, she has, even though she's poor, even though she has like, you know, the same as the Jacksons have, she still has like this currency, you know? She can still walk up to Laura and like say that. She can sit across from her and like have a cup of coffee in a way that like Florence, who's Mary J's character, can't. And so I chose that clip because I wanted to show like the layers of this world, and it's not just, you know, black and white. It's like got class baked into it, and it's got just kind of like the everyday casualness of violence. You know, I think we're a pathologically violent country, and so it's kind of like that clip kind of speaks to like just the easiness of death, you know, and the indifference of nature. And so, yeah.
With that, let's give it up for Dee Rees. Dee, thank you so much.
Thanks, man.